What's your testimony story, Wes?
Well, I'm grateful for this opportunity to share what God has done in my life because without Him, I wouldn't be here today. That's quite simply. And I was without without a father, really. My father passed away when I was 3, and my mother was a strong influence in my life as well as my uncles. They were Christian, and they gave me the background for my faith that I denied for many years. And I think the confusion of life and the temptations of the 60s drew me into a lifestyle that was very destructive, which I came to the end of after many years of running from the Lord. From 67 to probably 66 to 74, I ran from the Lord just about as hard as anybody. The alternate lifestyle, the turn on, tune in, drop out, all that stuff, drugs, alcohol, rock and roll. Good friend was a famous guitar player. Went through the whole lie, which said I could do anything I wanted to do, and there was no accountability for anything, and pretty much destroyed my life. And in 1974, I ended up on an island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, and I knew one person on that island, and that was my brother. And when I got there, my brother, who had been a surfer and abused drugs and had mental issues, was not the brother that I knew and grew up with. And that was the last straw for me, having lost my job in Lake Tahoe and ruined my relationship with the people that I cared about the most there with drugs and alcohol. I was literally at the end of my life. And I remember that night and that day in 1974, Thanksgiving Day, with my brother, who I loved dearly and was a role model, hero, great athlete, good surfer, and he was just crazy. Pardon me for that word, but there's no other way that I know to describe it. And it broke my heart, and my heart was already destroyed by the bad decisions and the sin that was there, and I was just literally burned out and empty. And he told me in his state of mind that I could not be saved, that I'd gone too far. And it knocked me over. I just fell over on the ground and started to cry. And as I did that, God, in the form of Jesus Christ, I knew who He was. I knew what was happening to me because of the awareness that my parents had taught me, especially my mother, of what God's Spirit was. She had introduced that to me a little earlier. And I felt His presence so strong that I felt that if I looked up, I would see Him. And I was afraid to look up. And all I could do was, it reminds me now scripturally what Peter said is, after he realized who Jesus was, when the fish were pulled into the boat and nearly sank the boat, there were so many of them, and he'd fished all day and never even had a fish in his net, that he was next to the Son of the living God. And that was a feeling that hits me today when I talk about it. And I felt the waves of the ocean when I laid there on the dry land wash over me. And all I could cry was that I can't. It was like He was asking me to follow Him, and I was just feeling like I was totally unworthy, like Peter said, have mercy on me, Lord, go away, don't, spare me. And that's how I felt. And I didn't understand, and I cried. I don't even know how long I was there. My brother was gone, and I guess he was disgusted with his crying brother on the ground and left. And when I woke up, or when I came back, I didn't go all the way out, but when I came back around, I was alone in the front yard of this little bungalow, and I looked around, and everything looked different. I was in a different frame of mind. I had a peace that I didn't have before, and I didn't feel like I was on the edge of my life. I felt like there was something that had happened to me that was good, and I knew that. I'd been reading little Bible scriptures that day, and that I got in a restaurant from Perry Boy's Smorgy, a little red book that had Bible verses in it. And every time I read those verses, I'd feel the presence of God a little bit. And so the culmination of that was when I got up off the ground, still had nowhere to go, didn't know anybody, didn't know what to do, but I felt like I was different. I felt like I was whole. I felt like I was whole for the first time in my life, probably. And I started walking around, shaking my head, and I thought I need to call my mother because she's going to know that what's happened to me, you know, because this is a God thing. And I did, and she gave me the phone number. This is a miracle that there was a pastor from Smyrna, Georgia, who conducted meetings in Paul and Mary Louise Story's basement. They live right up here, which was in my neighborhood in Marietta, Georgia. And I went to Sandy Kellogg's house, and I had to walk there. In fact, I hocked my jacket to get bus fare halfway there because I got tired. And I went to her house. She sat me down at the table with her 5 young children were living with her and her husband, who was a pastor of this little fellowship that I ended up a part of. And she explained to me that was the Holy Spirit, and they began to dictate to me what giving my life to Jesus was and what that meant. That night, I went to the first little meeting of that group, which was the result of a huge revival that had gone on the West Coast. And there were lots of people my age who were running from God at that point that were there already. And she said when I sat down at the table, all you lack is an airmail stamp on your head because God sent you here. That's what she said to me at the table. And boy, that hit me right between the eyes. And I thought, that's exactly how I feel. And when I went to the group, I was with a whole group of people who were in the same boat. And we had a little community there. My wife was there. I met her. We got married. We now have 4 children, 13 grandchildren, and God led us back here to this fellowship, to Paul and Mary Louise Story, and this land. And our little church was here, and for many years, and we had several other groups of churches that were part of the charismatic movement of the 60s and 70s with leadership that was outstanding, and they poured themselves into our life. And as a result of those foundational movements of God, really, this place was established. We didn't really understand what was happening, and what following the Jesus has led us to is that this is a place that it ministers to the nations. It is a home mission. It's defined by the number of people that come here from every corner of the world. And I'm not capable of designing that and making that happen. And what they do when they come here is they get into their group, their community, and they do what their group and their community, their tribe or their herd or whatever you want to call it, and they do the things that God has taught them to do together, which is they serve each other food, they worship together, and they sing in their own way. And our schedule, our dance card is nearly full now after having developed into a place where these people come. We have people that come here repeatedly. One of the groups from Venezuela, for example, comes here 7 times a year. They love this place. During the virus, they came here. They said, we can't stay away because we have too many people that have to come someplace because of the critical need in their life for the fellowship and the understanding and the stuff that I needed when I was at the point of death, really, in my life. And there are desperate people that come here from the sex trade. There are people who are delivered from cocaine. Our auditorium was painted by one man. I thought the group was going to paint, and he said, "No, I'm doing this by myself. God delivered me from cocaine in this auditorium 2 years ago," and he just painted all day. He did the whole thing by himself. It was amazing. Same thing with our campground, and the stories go on. A man from China showed up in the middle of the day. Another man said, "Can I help you?" He said, "God touched me here way back, 20 years ago, and I just flew through town, and he's from the mainland China, And he said, I had to just come here. And he went upstairs to the prayer room and prayed and got in his car and left. And that's the last time we saw him. So people from all over the world have been here, and there are people that God led here. And our dream and our vision is to hold on to that spirit that has built this place, that was established in Paul and Mary Louise's vision, which they have clung to. For many years, they clung to this vision adamantly, and people with visions, with real visions, that's how you tell, because it's something special in them, and it's something that is part of them that they can't get let go of. Paul's story was like that. He never digressed from that vision. He always had a heart for this place, and he worked diligently almost every day of his life while he was here to preserve this place and to make it what it is today. And we're inspired by his presence here, and the dedication of my mother and the ladies. We had 3 widows that lived on the ridge. They prayed constantly along with Mary Louise. That's just who they were. They weren't putting on a show for anybody. They just prayed, and they depended on God in their life, and they were all widows, and they depended on the church, and we feel that this place is an island. It's an oasis. It's a wide, pleasant valley, and it's preserved for God from now on. And we've worked hard, Deborah and I, in the last few years to set up the structure for it to be that way and to remain that way from now on, as far as we're concerned. So it's owned by the ministry, and everything here is dedicated to that ministry. So we're just grateful to be here. We feel like it's a piece of heaven, and we have people that come here and say that. Our community is a family community, and we live together and share the burden of the work here. But it's our sacrifice to Him. It's our offering to Him, and He blesses our life. And it's just great to be here, and I'm just thankful for the opportunity to share this to all of you people. And I hope I see you here, because God made this place for you, and here He wants to connect with you. And if you haven't received from Him your assignment, really, what is it that He wants you to do? Does He want you to sit on a pew and have faith, or does He want you to serve Him in a world that needs to hear the truth? If it ever needed to hear the truth, it needs to hear it now, and it comes from you. It doesn't come from Him. He left His Spirit here for us so that we could be obedient to Him and speak forth. We follow Jesus, and we follow Him close. And if you follow Him close, He exhorts you, just like I am now, to get with it, because now we need to speak out. We need to be that part of the body that functions well, that shows the world who He really is. And I think that's what He's calling us all to be today. So I'm going to leave that with you, and I'm just thankful for the opportunity to talk to you today. And I hope that God stirs something in your heart when you hear this, to respond not necessarily to this place or to anything except what He says to you about what I've said today, and ask Him, where is your place, and what is your calling? You've got DNA. You've got a God spot in you that God gave you, and you had that when you were born. And you know that. Somewhere in your knower, you know that. So I'm talking to that place right now, and I'm saying, wake up and come. You know, that's what Jesus is saying. I need you. And that's the call that brings people here. Bring your people. Come and enjoy what you love to do. He loves that too. He spoke over, the last time He spoke was at a meal. He loves that. That's who He is. He's your friend. He's not a religious idol that you put somewhere. There's nothing wrong with focusing on that, and that's okay. I'm not condemning that. I'm not condemning religion or churches, but I'm just saying that He's bigger than that, and He has a spot in you that He wants to live, so you can be obedient to His call. So that's the word from me, and we welcome you at the land. We hope you come here, and we can help you.